Hello everybody and welcome to this React JSX tutorial. My name is Gilad. This tutorial is going to talk about JSX, which is the cornerstone of React, and its advantages over the traditional JavaScript and HTML. This tutorial assumes that you've already familiarized yourself with JavaScript and HTML on some level. It doesn't matter if you're experienced in JavaScript and HTML, if you've only done some projects, if you've only fiddled with it, whatever. So let's start. JSX started in 2013 along with React. Let's have a look at, first of all, at some pretty basic HTML code. All right, so we have here some very simple app, shows and hides this React meme about JSX and JavaScript and HTML. Okay, let's have a look at the code and what the code, how the code looks. All right, so we have a button here that on click activates some JavaScript function toggle div, and we have the image here, which is, it has the ID img, and pretty traditionally, we have the scripts tag that directs us to a file called scripts.js. Okay, let's have a look at scripts.js, what it has here. Now, the function toggle div, it searches for the image in the document query selector img, and looks at the display property of it. If it's none, it turns it to block. If it's block, it turns it to none. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now, some of you may know jQuery and don't know the document query selector, or have used it less. So this is pretty similar. jQuery gives you the $sign. That is a shorthand and kind of like a power up, I would say, for document query selector. But it's the same thing as doing in jQuery, $ and the selector. Okay, so let's have a look at the code again, at what the application is actually doing. Shows and hides the meme. Nothing interesting so far. Now let's talk about JSX. Okay, so first of all, what is JSX? So for this, I'd like to go into the formal React JSX documentation. Okay, and as a rule of thumb, I always like to go to the formal documentation to be in sync with the actual source of things. So let's have a look at what is written here. So over here we have this code, and they tell us this funny tag syntax is neither a string nor HTML. All right, so let's dig into this and see what they mean by that. So, const element, this is familiar ES6, but JavaScript syntax, right? But over here we have equals, and that already equals an HTML element, right? So, how come this is possible? How come JavaScript code and HTML code are in the same line? So the answer is that JSX is not a standard JavaScript or HTML syntax. It's a special syntax that needs to be transpiled. Okay, so when we say transpiled, that's a word, fancy word, that means basically translated from one language to another. In this case, it's translating it from JSX to JS. Okay, so that means that this code, if I were to open the console, okay, and I was to run it, what would I be getting? Syntax error. It's syntax error, unexpected token, less than. Why? Because JSX is not valid JavaScript syntax, and the console over here only knows JavaScript. Okay? If I was to run this on in an HTML page, similar thing would have happened. I would see that const element is not rendered as a variable. It would just be printed in the page, right? So we have to remember that whenever we want to run a JSX file, a JSX syntax, sorry, it needs to be transpiled by something. Usually, it's done by something called Babel or Babel. Some say it, which runs in the background and turns the JSX syntax into JS. Okay. Okay. So now let's have a look at real JSX code. So we go to, this is the same application, but written with React. And this is the code. So what do we have here? So we have import React, because we need to use React, and this is ES6 syntax. We need to import React to be able to use the JSX, okay? Over here, we have a definition of something called state, okay? State is a cornerstone of React. It's a more complex subject I won't go into in this video, but in future videos, stay tuned. And here we have the actual HTML that is returned. So it's not really HTML, it's JSX. So let's look at the difference. What is the difference? So over here we have the same button. On click, it does toggle div. But over here, we already have something interesting. And I'll explain. So we have the div, but the key thing about JSX is to notice, first of all, this thing here, the curly brackets, okay? The curly brackets, if we're inside a JSX, we have the HTML flow, but then we have the curly brackets over here, then that means that we're stepping out of the HTML syntax and into JavaScript syntax. The state show meme is already JavaScript syntax, okay? Now, for those of you who haven't seen this before, so it may look a little bit weird because you're not used to seeing dynamic code, in this case JavaScript code, inside static HTML code. Static meaning that it's not changing, that this is what there is, and over here there's already code that is being run, that is dynamic. Okay. However, if some of you may come from ASP.NET, PHP, Razor View Engine, JSP, stuff like that, so it may look a little bit familiar over there, because also over there we have like some signs that allow us to step out of the HTML syntax and into JavaScript, into dynamic code. In those cases, it's server-side code. It doesn't matter for this purpose. All right. So let's have a look at the JavaScript code. So does it actually say? It says state show meme, which is a variable, a Boolean variable, and we have the and signs. The and signs, we know them in JavaScript from if, and it's the same and sign, okay? So actually what we're telling React here is if show meme, state show meme, only then will you render this image. And again, in this image, we are going back into the HTML syntax. And notice how robust the transition is. So we don't have any complex function. We're just moving back and forth from JavaScript to HTML. And we can use simple JavaScript logic, yeah, this logic, to customize our HTML, to make it dynamic. And this is the power of JSX, okay? And over here we have the image. So basically, and then what we do is that we close the curly brackets here and go back to HTML syntax. So again, what do we have here? We have a variable of JavaScript that says the variable is a condition for this image to appear, because React looks at this variable, and only if it's true, then it will show the image. Now, the toggle div button, which before we know that we had to look for the image and change its display property explicitly, imperatively, if you will. So over here, we have some function that using the state actually changes the show meme variable. Okay, and this is pretty standard toggle logic that actually means take the state.show meme and flip it. Okay, the exclamation mark, you know, not says that if it was true, turn it to false, and if it's false, turn it to true. Okay, so actually, and this is what controls the show meme variable, and when we click the button, the image disappears and appears. Okay? Now, assuming that this is basically operationally does the same thing, right? This does shows and hides the picture, and also this shows and hides the picture. So why is this better? Why is this better than this? Because we have to remember that whenever we use this JSX thing, as we said before, we have to transpile it. We have to have some step that automatically transpiles the JSX into JavaScript. So what is it good for? So when I look here, I only see an image. I see that the image is declared, and I know that there's an image. However, what I don't know, and this is the key, one of the key advantages of JSX, what I don't know is what's going to happen with this image. I don't know if later it's going to be removed, hidden, moved around, added somewhere else in the document. If another image is going to be added to it, if it's going to be resized, whatever. All I know when I'm a developer that looks only at the declarative HTML file, okay, is that I have an image. However, if I look at the JSX file over here, then I see straight away, at first glance, I see that the image is dependent on the variable state.showMeme. Okay? Now this is pretty powerful. Think about it. I don't need to go to any other file. I don't need to activate any other functionality. Just by looking at the declarative syntax, meaning the syntax that describes what is in the document, I know that the image depends on the showMeme variable. So actually, this is incorporating logic into the declarative description of the document. Now, declarative and versus imperative programming is actually something that exists all around computer science, and it's not just about React or JavaScript or browsers or web development. So if we just a side note, if we were to Google this, we see that that basically declarative programming is about describing what we have, whereas imperative programming is about giving imperative commands, commanding, if you will, the computer what to do. So why was our initial implementation imperative? Because this code is imperative. This code happens after the page is rendered, right? Because the JavaScript is being loaded here, and this happens afterwards, and it's not connected to the DOM in the sense, the document object model, it's not connected in a sense that it has to go and search for the image from the beginning, as if it has no knowledge of what happened in the DOM. It searches for the image and only then changes the display property. Okay? Whereas the JSX code, showMeme, is incorporated into the declarative syntax. It's already intertwined into the syntax, and we don't have to add any other functionality. And this is pretty powerful. Think about it like if this was like a complex application, a complex project. Think about if we had dozens of these kinds of like flags, if you will. So my scripts.js file would be very long, and I would have to read a lot of code to find out who touches my image. And this is what happens, like, and this is what happened with stuff like jQuery and things like that in the web development world, up to when frameworks like React and Angular and before that Ember and Backbone and Ext and stuff like that appeared, because these frameworks allow you to define more advanced logic already on the declarative syntax itself. They allow you much more, but this is not for this video. Okay? Cool. So we'll wrap it up for now. I hope this is clear, and I hope I managed to help you. React is cool. Don't worry about it. Like the learning curve is not very steep in the beginning. It's a friendly framework. I hope you enjoyed. You're welcome to leave comments below. I'll put all the relevant links below. And stay tuned for more videos. And good luck in your programming career. And happy coding. Bye.